Welcome back. This is the Changelog. I'm Adam Stacoviak, and this week on the Changelog, we're talking to recovering data scientist Joe Reis about data engineering and the beginning of generative AI. We start off with the origins of phone hacking using frequencies, the role of a data engineer, the AI hype cycle we're in, build versus buy around AI tech, the disconnect between data analysts and the business, ethical considerations around AI-generated content. We also discuss the tension between AI and traditional engineering, as well as the inevitability of AI integration into pretty much everything. A supermassive thank you to our friends, partners, and the home of changelog.com, fly.io. Launch your app near your users. Fly transforms containers into micro VMs that run on their hardware in 30 plus regions on 6 continents. And as you know, Antarctica is coming soon. Wink, wink. Launch an app for free at fly.io. Hey friends, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Synadia. Synadia is helping teams take NATS to the next level via a global, multi-cloud, multi-geo, and extensible service fully managed by Synadia. They take care of all the infrastructure, management, monitoring, and maintenance for you so you can focus on building exceptional distributed applications. And I'm here with VP of Product and Engineering, Byron Ruth, and David G., Director of Product Strategy. So when you think about connectivity being the first thing to consider, someone push back on this and say, well, think about it later. What competes with a mind share of connectivity?
Just like an HTTP developer, you actually just download and run the NAT server. Whereas an HTTP developer, if you're building an HTTP set of endpoints, you typically have to implement or, use an HTTP library. And then, whether it's a Go standard library, Python, whatever it is, and you're actually implementing endpoints that register into the HTTP server. And then now you have to go deploy this HTTP server and ensure that it's performant. So it's a slightly different model, but you download the NAT server, it's a standalone binary. It runs on, the majority of platforms. And then you have a handful of client SDKs across all the major languages. You download that, and we even have a higher level API that is akin to what HTTP developers have of defining a handler, for example. We just call it our services API. And you basically have a few boilerplate things that you register your handler in the NATS context. And out of the box, it actually supports sort of a general request reply setup. And then you get all of these other benefits out of the gate. But the experience and the onboarding is arguably just as simple as any other HTTP onboarding, with the exception that you're technically deploying a client application that implements these NAT services in addition to the NAT server. But that's where the Synadia Cloud, it's already a managed instance, and we even have the demo server for you to just try it out. It's a public endpoint that you can literally connect to. So you can still build a simple client application, use the demo server as the endpoint, and then you can play with that and use that as sort of the server deployment.
Well, if we talk about it just from, this central view of applications, forget networking and all that kind of packet-based stuff, you were calling them HTTP developers, which kind of stuck instead of API devs. I mean, what do people do? They either glue it together at a primitive level, so the primitive being HTTP. They move up the stack in their mind's eye and they go, we're going to do some gRPC, which is kind of still point-to-point. So it's a lot of point-to-point stuff versus broker-assisted connectivity, which is way simpler. You connect to an endpoint, you get told about other endpoints. It's like connecting to a hive mind. What we're trying to do is move people away from coordinated point-to-point connectivity to easy connect to anything securely and connect to your other stuff securely, instead of having to coordinate the whole, rat's nest of where to connect to them. Then you've got to negotiate, well, what do we do then? Now we've got to go and get the schema information, and can we even connect to this thing, and does it even work, and what version is it, and all this stuff. And what we're trying to do is transform that and flip that to unify it to make it much simpler. So I think we're trying to go from a rat's nest of point-to-point connectivity in the application space to making everything on net. And it's like connecting to a hive mind. And what we're kind of asking people to do is think about applications the same way you would video conferencing. So if me and Byron are going to have a chat, we might do a huddle on Slack or jump on a Zoom or something. But if we want a colleague to join, we ask them to join the same call. So we can have a point-to-point conversation by the same medium, or we can have a party line. via the same medium. So, it's request, reply, or pub sub, but it's on the same platform. We don't care about what Zoom server we connect to. We connect to the service, and we coordinate our communications over the fabric.
There you go. Yesterday's tech is not cutting it. NATS, powered by the global multi-cloud, multi-geo, and extensible service, fully managed by Synadia, is the way of the future. Learn more at synadia.com/changelog. That's SYNADIA.com/changelog.
We are here with best-selling author, data engineer, and architect, recovering data scientist. I'm just reading your LinkedIn here, Joe.
That's fine.
We're here with Joe Reis. Hey, welcome.
Hey, what's up? How you guys doing?
Good.
Awesome.
Very well. I like recovering data scientist. You have that trademarked in your profile. I'll bite. What does that mean, recovering data scientist?
I mean, I made a lot of bad choices in my life. Things not proud of. Data science may have been one of them at one point. So, I went to recovery, and I'm very, very proud of where I am now. I'm just kidding. So, I think it kind of
really selling it there. I was liking it. I was digging it.
Yeah, I was going to turn this into a TED talk. About how you can start crying. You too can achieve your dreams in life. I think it was sort of a tongue in cheek joke back in the day. Data science, it was the sexiest job of the 21st century, I think, and so, and me and other people, had been in the data for quite a while, actually, were hired as data scientists, and just quickly realized that in a lot of cases, the foundations weren't set up. You couldn't really get data to do any science upon, for example, or it's really difficult to do your job. So I kind of, I think we started out, I think we were calling ourselves, me and my friends, reformed data scientists. I think recovering sounded a bit more fun. So just stuck with it. Yeah, that's the story. But you're finding more of them these days, they're starting to come out of the woodwork. People who are a bit jaded on data science, which we can maybe dig into if we want to. Yeah.
So I feel like the name of people who work with data in such ways just kind of morphs. And now maybe that was like a phase when like data scientist became a proper noun and became a job title that you could make good bank with for a while. Maybe you still can, or you probably still can. And now there's like data engineer, and now there's and then there's AI engineers coming, and there's
prompt engineering.
It sounds like data engineering is a thing that you ascribe to, since you have an O'Reilly book, Fundamentals of Data Engineering. Is that a title now? Is that a role, or is it a verb, something you do? How do you see it?
More of an adverb. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it is a title. But as you point out, it's interesting. A lot of titles have morphed. If you look back to what happened with data science as an example, right? It was one thing. And I think back in the day, it was kind of like you were jokingly called it the other day on a podcast, sort of the CrossFitter of data. Like you're not really good at anything in particular, but more of a generalist. Mm-hmm. Maybe good at like stats. You can type code. You might be able to type in general.
Hopefully you can type.
I don't know. I mean, sometimes you just do the
put that on your resume.
10 words per minute.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, but that ended up being kind of an agglomeration of every title out there in data at the time, right? So it was like if you were an analyst, suddenly you're a data scientist. If you're doing machine learning, which is more of how I got into it, then you'd be a data scientist and so forth. So, but I see the same thing happening with data engineering, where it started out, I think, as a, sort of a big data engineer, I think was maybe how that started back in the day when big data was still a thing. And that was another kind of a bygone era, right?
2009, 2010.
Remember data mining? Is data mining something still people talk about?
That just gets folded into data engineering or data science now, depending what you're doing, right? So it's all data. I mean, it's just, but you got to look at how a job titles start, right? It's kind of like, if you're a company hiring people, you want to get the sexiest catch-all title you can. If you get too specific, like, Oracle data miner or something like that, you'll probably get a more specific candidate, but people want the sexy titles. And so I think it's kind of how data engineering came about. But I as I dug deeper into it, me and my co-author, Matt Housley, what we realized was, I was writing the book, and, before, like if you were to describe it from first principles, it actually is a thing. Like it's a real thing. So it's not just a made up title, but we can get into what that real thing is, or at least how we imagine it. But yeah, but title wise though, and even as I point out in the last chapter of the book, I feel like titles are just one of these things that are constantly evolving, in our field where you're talking software or data or whatever. So it's just the title today probably won't be the title tomorrow.
Yeah, everything's iterative, It's always, it begins somewhere and goes somewhere else. That's for sure.
And sometimes it's posturing, right? Like I'm not a developer. I'm not a programmer. I'm a developer. I'm not a developer. I'm an engineer. I'm not an engineer. I'm an architect.
Yeah. And you almost want to like get hired for the title you want to. That's why even with the specificity of the title, like Oracle data miner, for example, you might be like, yeah, I might want to work for Oracle, but do I want to be an Oracle data miner? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. You kind of get attracted to a title potentially.
It could. And then that becomes your identity.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because that impacts your ability to give talks and stuff like that, or show up on podcasts. Like, what do you do? I'm an Oracle data miner. No, what do you do? That's my title. Okay, that's me. I do that.
We struggled with this, Joe, back when we were naming the Practical AI podcast. So we wanted to start a podcast in this space, and Daniel Whitenack and Chris Benson wanted to do it with us. And Dan is Data Dan. I mean, he's a data scientist, or he was. Now he's a founder, and I don't know what he calls himself now, but we didn't know what to call the thing, like, do we focus around data? Do we focus around, and we knew that AI was a burgeoning term, even though we didn't think it necessarily applied to the things it was burgeoning around. But that seemed to be the smartest noun to pick. And then of course we wanted to show that was not just about the hype and the theory and all this stuff, but a practical show. And so that's how the name came out. But it wasn't easy for us to pick that because of this moving target, because evolving. And I feel like we picked a name that was well prepared for this current hype cycle, but also probably didn't exactly apply to some of the stuff that's been discussed on the show.
Yeah. Like when did the podcast come out?
2018, 2018.
Oh, you're way ahead of the curve then. I mean,
we were way like 5 years. We've been doing it for like 5 years, I think.
Yeah.
AI was, I think it was just starting to become a term. So I remember when I was working at a machine learning startup back in 2012, and we actually forbade ourselves from using the term AI because it had just come off a few like other AI crashes, And so I think back then it was predictive analytics was the cool thing to call it. And then machine learning was sort of becoming the thing. Andrew Ng's course had come out maybe a year or two before that. And that, it sort of blew up, and then machine learning was becoming cool. But then AI, I think around the time that was kind of actually a pretty bold move, because it made, practical ML probably would have been the more zeitgeisty.
For sure. I think machine learning was hot right then.
Yeah.
Sure was.
We didn't know exactly what to call it. I think we settled on that. And then we did the comma separated list of keywords behind it, So it was called Practical AI,
DS, ML, AI.
Data science, comma, machine learning, something like that. So that people could find it when they search for machine learning, because you have to do those gross things in order for people to find stuff. So
you certainly do.
For the record, I was against AI in the title. I was all for data. I was like, this has to have data in it. I can recall the arguments. Mm-hmm. It's a data show. It's data engineering. I didn't see where the puck was going. And thankfully, Dan and Chris were way wiser than I was, because they saw where the puck was going. And they're like, no, we want to talk about practical artificial intelligence. We want to talk about how it actually applies to developers today, even though it's not quite here yet. Where is it going to really land? And how can we actually use it? And that was such a wise move on their part. And that's honestly, that's part of the wisdom of the crowd, so to speak, when it comes to, Jared and I run the show around here, and Dan and Chris are not owners necessarily, but they were partners in the long-term endeavor. And we could have certainly forced our hand, in quotes, which we would never do. We don't do that. And push for, no, it's got to be data. This is not right. And thankfully, we were like, no, that makes sense. At least, I don't know what your position was, Jared, but I was like against AI. I thought like, that's not coming. That's not here. What's going on here,
Okay, so you didn't like it because you were like, this is like fantasy land. Like, that's not a...
Well, I just thought data was there. The machine learning aspect was there. And I just didn't see that the true umbrella term, and this is where they sold it, was like the true umbrella term is all this is artificial intelligence. Even though what we think of artificial intelligence is going to be, what it is what these things are, realistically. So the umbrella term of AI really made more sense. And they said, we're not talking about just data. We're talking about machine learning, data science, engineering. It's all these things is really encompassed in this umbrella term of artificial intelligence. And honestly, that was a really wise suggestion back in those days, because obviously we're now where the puck went to. We skated to that puck with a name and we met it.
Right. Which, interestingly, at least it's interesting to me, after November of last year, which was ChatGPT's release, and here we are, well, not last year, I guess it was 2 years ago now, as we are in 2024, but 12, 13, 14 months ago, the audience of that podcast, thanks to nothing but the hype cycle, because the podcast was already good, it's still good, it was doing the exact same thing, that they didn't change their content in order to match. But by picking that name, the audience of that particular podcast doubled. The audience doubled, where the rest of our shows have continued to do their slow and steady. It just went, and so there you are. There's prescience, right? Like you just picked the right word and happened to ride. I'm saying we're riding the wave now, guys. We're riding the wave.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a wave. I mean, so I traveled the world last year giving talks, and inevitably AI was thinking, I've been in the ML field for a while, right? And data and
Sure.
AI was sort of coming up as a term in popularity, especially around kind of but it always been confusing. You're like, well, was that really AI, like in the AI sense, or is it kind of just like you're throwing this term on because it's kind of cool, right? So I don't know. I think it's funny because like a curmudgeon friends of mine and myself who is also a curmudgeon, and I guess we just reluctantly accepted that it's now AI, because that's a term everyone uses. It's like one could argue it's probably not, but it doesn't matter. It is what it is, right? So like when I traveled the world giving talks, it was interesting, like because increasingly throughout the year, AI was at every conference more and more. Beginning of last year, 2023, it was starting to become a thing. And then you get to the middle of the year, right? You go Snowflake Summit, go to Databricks, and it's like AI is the conference.
It's everywhere.
And I get to Dubai, what was that, October or something like that. I was at a conference called GITEX, which is like 170,000 people at this conference, by the way. It's massive. What? Yeah.
That's huge.
That is a lot of people.
You realize, okay, so like we live in the West, right? Western society. And what you realize when you look at the name tags and the locations of where these people, the attendees are from, it's like China, Iran, Pakistan, Africa. Like you realize the world there's a totally like almost parallel universe happening.
Right. And it's big.
It's bigger than what we have here. Like a long shot. But every company had some AI story there at that conference. Everybody was an AI company. It didn't matter whether you were selling, mops or something, you probably have an AI angle to it. And I was at CES a couple weeks ago. Right. Same thing. AI was the story of the conference. Everything had to have an AI pitch to it. And the other crazy thing was, just the sheer amount of like Chinese car companies. It was, if you think American car companies are doing cool stuff like Tesla, I don't think it has much on what China's doing right now in terms of either self-driving or electric. There's just a lot of companies that I've never heard of. Here, all the companies.
There was actually a mention of that, I believe, in Snacks recently, Jared, where they were saying that I'm going to try and find the name, but there was a Chinese car manufacturer that was actually beating Tesla.
In sales or in tech?
Yeah.
In sales.
No, BYD, I think it was. That would be them, I think. That's actually the one that, Warren Buffett invested in them many, many years ago. But you realize, I saw the technology, I'm like, holy crap, like it's just a tale of two worlds at this point. So, but everything's AI at these conferences. It is what it is.
Yeah. The cat's out of the bag. You can't put it back in.
Oh, no. I even, when I was in Dubai, they have a whole ministry of AI there. They have a minister of AI. You have to call him His Excellency. That's crazy, man. Yeah.
He must be really good at it.
Yeah. I hope he is.
I just feel like anybody who gets called Your Excellency has to be pretty good at what they do, Hopefully.
I should have put that as my name for the
You should add that to
show.
To your LinkedIn list of accolades. Yeah. All right. So, Joe, we have your take on AI. I think, the sentiment resonates. If we were to call you His Excellency, like what would be your particular domain? Like what's your view of the world? I know data modeling is involved, but what's exciting to you? What's interesting? Like, what are you into right now?
I think the boring stuff is exciting to me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Like data labeling.
Data labeling is just the hottest thing in the world.
You just love it. You just love to do that.
I just love to label data all day. It's like, just dream about it at night.
What do you mean by boring though? Like, that's what I think of as boring.
Well, like, I think the boring stuff is what excites me, right? I think like right now, especially in software and in data for practitioners, there's no shortage of great tooling at this point. I don't think you could say any of the software or data that we have a lack of great tooling. I mean, especially compared to 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, a developer, it's like, what are you going to go back to the mean stack? You want to go do that again? Or, you know what I'm saying? So it's like things have improved quite a bit. Things always improve, but the same is happening in data. Our tools are wonderful. But what I feel like is everything, tools are abstracting a lot of workflows. And increasingly, this allows a couple things. One, it allows engineers of all disciplines really to, I think, do more, quote, enterprisey things, work with the business a bit more closely.
Okay.
So that's one aspect of it, which we would talk about. The other part of it is I feel like there's a massive gap in terms of education and skills versus the potential of the tools and the capabilities that they promise. So, when I say boring, I think that, what I'm excited about is one, helping upskill, at least a lot of data practitioners, so they can better leverage the tools that they have. And two, I'm excited for what comes next, because I feel like a lot of, at least in data proper, a lot of the classical, at least from a technology standpoint, things like analytics, which companies still struggle with for some reason. I mean, that should be a solved problem from a technology angle, right? But why is it we keep struggling with it from an implementation standpoint, right? So there's some of these things I'm pretty excited about. And again, these are not sexy topics. The sexy thing would be for me to say, yeah, I'm like totally stoked on AI and building Skynet and all this stuff. And like, why are you even bothering with, talking about these other topics? But to me, I find them interesting. Part of it is I think that, this current AI cycle we're in, for at least for corporate implementations, I feel like if we can't get the basics right and the boring stuff right, things like data management quality, all these things that this are going to be powering AI, I feel like a lot of this hype cycle is actually going to come crashing back to reality quite soon.
Yeah.
So kind of a garbage in, garbage out kind of thing.
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the skill set and the tooling of a data engineer? What are some of the skills and tools that, in quotes, a data engineer or one who you're trying to upskill is trying to get to?
Yeah, I mean, as we describe it in our book, I'll take a step back and sort of describe what we wrote in the philosophy that we took. So we wanted to, the types of books that we saw, me and my co-author, that we really didn't like about data engineering were like these data engineering on technology X, Y, or Z, or programming language, say Python, or on AWS. Nothing wrong with that, obviously. I think it's great. But the thing is, these are very ephemeral types of books and lessons. You know how fast things change.
Yeah, they're stale pretty quickly. If they're too niched, it's just very stale. Yeah.
Yeah, so we wanted to take a step back and really understand from a technology agnostic level, what would be the immutables of data engineering if you were to describe it from first principles. And so really that's what we try to describe, right? So it's things like, getting data from source systems, so the systems that maybe an application, developer or engineer, however they want to call themselves, right?
Right.
Systems that are more upstream from quote data, helping you understand what those systems are, and then obviously ingestion mechanisms and methods to get that data, storing it, processing it, transforming it, querying patterns and so forth, and finally serving it for downstream use cases like analytics, machine learning, and so forth. So really, those, I would say that framework is really the framework that we feel a data engineer should think in. Obviously, this is not a linear progression. Things can loop back on themselves. So I think this really was sort of the agnostic framework that we'd, come up with. And then, of course, undercurrents, right? So things like security, you can't just pigeonhole that into any one section of that data engineering lifecycle, as we call it. Security, you can say, security only belongs in storing data. Like everything else is, don't need to worry about it there, because that would be like quite reckless. So, data management, orchestration, everything else, architecture. So that's sort of the framework that we developed for data engineers to really think about and reconcile their job. Because up to then, there really wasn't a framework to think about data engineering as a profession. It was just, I think that the advice was, just go learn Spark. And it's like, that's not really good advice. It's like telling a surgeon to go learn Scalpel or EKG. It's like, that's
right. It's one specific tool.
Yeah. It's like, it's not advice. So we really want to take a step back and I think just provide, a mental framework, but in a way that if you kind of, as well as you can predict how things go in technology, aren't going to change in 5 to 10 years. Right. So, and I still see this as true. Like there's not a situation where, the various types of storing, data for machine learning and analytics use cases, I don't know why that doesn't really change. The details may change. Vector databases are more popular, but they've been popular. They've been kind of on the rise for a bit before the AI boom. So the whole point is just being able to rationalize how all these things fit together. So that's a framework that we want people to think of. Now, tools and technologies, I would say what we try and tell people is, the early part of the book is full of best practices, like thinking like a data engineer, think about architecture, right? Something that's not discussed at all typically. You have to go figure out on your own. And then how to choose technologies, right? So build versus buy.
Oh, yeah?
Open source versus paid, all this stuff, right? So it's a good rubric for a good practical way of thinking about it. So
now you got my attention there, Joe. I like those topics for sure.
Well, let's talk about them.
When do I build and when do I buy? Just give me the answer. It's a simple, straightforward decision, isn't it?
So if you use my affiliate code for
always buy,
just go buy for sure. I am actually a fan of. So I always use the comparison of. I like to ask, how often do you go and make your own car tires from scratch?
Haven't yet.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't either. There's people that probably do it.
Tempted. Truck tires are pretty expensive.
Yeah, they are. But, if you want to locally grow your own car tires, I mean, go for it. But the shops that do this and people that can install them for you. I mean, I can install car tires just fine. But do I do that every day? No, because I got other things to do. And
can you? You can install a car tire?
Yeah.
I saw this video. Speaking of AI and automation, really, it was more like AI that leads to automation. I think it was Volvo. And it was showing off their plant and how efficient it is at creating the tire and putting it on the rim in like minutes.
Whoa.
And how quickly it can go from raw material to tire on rim in the automation process. And I was like, yeah. And so I guess juxtaposing that to what you're saying, I'm never going to create my own tire after watching that kind of video. I'm going to dig it up and throw it in the show notes. It's pretty awesome.
But you would want to make a tire, and I guess you would want to build when it's to a competitive advantage for you. And that's what I mean. Like,
yeah, if I was Maxxis or Goodyear, or if I was like a tire brand, I would for sure obviously be building my own tires. But as an individual who has one use, actually technically 4 uses, right? Because 4 tires per vehicle, unless I'm driving like something different that's got 6.
Economies of scale.
Yeah, or a motorcycle.
Do you have like the big truck with like the 2 tires on the back end of it?
Dually?
Like,
no.
Yeah, those are fun. Yeah, maybe in Nebraska they have them over there on the farmland. I was about to say there's lots of dualies there.
They do. Oh, there's lots of dualies around here. Yeah.
But it's the equivalent. I think that's how I view build versus buy for technology. Where and this is where I'm excited because I feel like again, as tools become more abstracted, there's a lot of options you can, hopefully pay for or use open source, whatever, right? But the fact is, it's already been done for you, all the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Thinking through this rubric of avoiding as much undifferentiated heavy lifting as possible and really focusing your attention on things that move the needle for your business. And that's the comment earlier about working with the business, like helping the business solve problems. I feel like this is, I think, really awesome because there's a big disconnect, right? We see this in engineering all the time. Like, the engineers aren't serving the business. The data team isn't serving the business and they're off nerding out, doing whatever they do. This is a common complaint that I hear from business stakeholders is, engineering team doesn't understand what we do. Mm-hmm. But then the engineers always complain, oh, we don't understand what the business does. Why do they get to keep bugging us all these stupid questions and requests to help them?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, just go
Everybody
away.
has their perspective, right?
I was talking with a friend of mine this morning on a podcast about, just why is it that, because she wrote a book on becoming a data analyst. And her question was, why is it that, data analysts seem to have a disdain for the business people? And it's like, that's an interesting perspective. Business people feel the same way about you probably too, if you have that mindset. So, so that's what I'm excited about. And that's how I view it.
What's up, friends? This episode is brought to you by one of my good friends, one of my best friends, actually, one of our good friends, Tailscale. And if you've heard me on a podcast, you've heard me mention Tailscale several times in unsponsored ways because I just love Tailscale. And I reached out to them and said, hey, we're talking to a lot of developers I love Tailscale. I'd love to have you guys sponsor us, and they reciprocated. So what is Tailscale? Well, Tailscale is a programmable networking software that is private and secure by default, which makes it the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other wherever they are. You get secure remote access to production, databases, servers, Kubernetes, VPCs, on-prem stuff, anything. It's fast, like really, really fast. And you can install it anywhere. Windows, Linux, BSD, Mac OS, iOS, Android. It is an easy to deploy, zero config, no fuss VPN. It is zero trust network access that every organization can use. So what can you do with Tailscale? You can build simple networks across complex infrastructure. They have ACL policies to securely control access to devices and services with their next-gen network access controls. You can replace legacy VPN infrastructure in just a few minutes. You can use device posture management to granularly restrict access to resources based on a wide range of attributes like OS version, user location, and more. You can save time with a trusted and proven networking solution that just works. You can transform networking security with a modernized set of solutions built on revolutionary protocols designed for today's mobile and multi-cloud era. You can securely connect to anything, no matter what operating system, hardware type, or configuration is in place, such as your GitHub runner to a database on-prem. You can authenticate without authentication using Tailscale's app connectors. You can send files securely to any node on your Tailnet using Taildrop. You can code from your iPad even with Tailscale and VS Code Server. There's just so much you could do with Tailscale. Like the limits are literally limitless. And that's why I love Tailscale. I've got 28 machines personally that I manage on my Tailnet. And if you've heard me talk on the podcast, you've heard me mention Tailscale at least once or twice. But today, you can try Tailscale for free, up to 100 devices like me, and 3 users for free at tailscale.com. No credit card required. Again, it's free, up to 100 devices and 3 users, all for free at tailscale.com. No credit card required. Have fun. I'm more curious about this whole disdain.
Oh, you are?
Oh,
And what the root cause is for that, really. I mean, I think that,
Humans not getting along?
well, I think to your point, it's kind of like tangential to the build versus buy, which is focus on the product. The product is the business, right? The product is a result of the business needing to succeed. And so if the analysts are upset with the business folks and vice versa, then it's because there's a disconnect on what the focus of the business is and what the individual roles contribute to the focus of the business, the product.
yeah.
So if you're not focused and you're not centered on what the goal and mission is, that truly is a business issue because it's the business executives that should drive the mission of the business and what the focus of every individual and team should be focused on. So the disdain is really a lack of focus, right?
I agree.
I mean, because they're there to solve a problem. And if they're solving a problem, then it should result in business benefit, i.e. better product, faster product, a more quantified product, better data for marketing, better data for sales so they can focus their efforts more, better data for engineering so that they're building the right thing at the right time with the right purpose, all those things. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. And then how often is it that you hear from engineers like, gosh, our CEO just keeps coming to us every damn second with some new idea, or so
Lack of focus.
Lack of focus. It's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
I heard a crazy story. One of my relatives was an early engineer over at Nikola, actually, the electric car company.
They rolled down a hill. Didn't they roll one down a hill?
It was
for their
really
demo?
good at being put in neutral and rolling down a hill. Yeah, that was
their demo.
that was
Yeah.
the product. That's the future of cars.
So cool.
So,
Fred Flintstone all over again, basically, right?
All we need is more hills. If we just had all hills, we'd be fine.
we should make more hills, especially in Nebraska.
Well, we could definitely use some more.
But he would tell me stories. Trevor Milton, I guess he's now off to jail, so it doesn't really matter. He'd come into the office like every day. It was just like a new idea. He'd be like, I need this done. And people would be like, we never heard of this before. Or it'd make an announcement like, hey, we're doing this. And people are like, what? We never heard of this initiative at all. like building a car that works or something. I don't know. So, but you know, but that's an extreme case. But it drove this relative absolutely insane. She's like, I can't stand working here. I'm like, just stick it out. Who knows what happens? You end up cashing out for a lot of money, thank God. But you know, in the amount of just stuff you would say, I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. This is like a different level of that, because as engineers, we've all seen this, right? Somebody gets an idea for a feature, like, oh, this is going to change everything for a company. You got to make this a priority right now. And Adam, you're absolutely right. It's focus, right? That's 100,000% right. But all too often, it's the hardest thing, isn't it?
Yeah. When you're zigzagging, you're not focusing.
No.
Which is why we have a common refrain around these parts, which we hopefully impart to our listeners, which is the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing.
That's right.
And you got to do that. And if you fail to do that, you find yourself focusing on all kinds of things, which is not focus, that are not the main thing. And that's a recipe for failure. I've just seen it too many times.
Yeah. I mean, how do you reel that in, though? Have you guys found it? Is there a magic bullet or silver bullet for
There is a magic bullet.
Yeah.
Slow down and check yourself.
Now we're giving you more of our lines. Oh, we've got a phrase for everything.
Man, you can make a whole album out of this.
We could, yeah.
It's challenging.
It's challenging, but it's easier for small orgs, I think. You know, so here we are in a small org. And so it's easy for us to have a cohesive mission and vision and focus because there's just not so many people to keep on that same focus. And so we're kind of in our perch here telling people how to live their lives, but not in large, you know, very complicated org structures in which these things are very difficult. So,
but that's what podcasters are supposed to do. I mean, we're all supposed to pontificate and
yeah, we're doing our job. You know, you do yours.
If you need a coupon code, we can use Jared20 for 20% off BetterHelp. Your first month is free. Yeah. So
yeah, it's easy for us because we don't have to actually do it. We just talk about it, you know?
That's what we do best.
A little bit tongue in cheek there, but you know, I think it goes back to leadership, and leadership has to have the focus. Then they have to be able to like keep that distributed throughout everybody else. And sometimes you just got to remind, I mean, even in our small little org here, even myself, even inside myself, I have to remind myself, is this the main thing right now that you're doing? Is this actually driving value? Or are you just like doing your engineering thing and just doing some engineering because you like engineering, for instance? And so, yeah, you have to be cognizant of it. And then in large teams, I don't know, maybe you've worked in larger teams than we have and can help us come up with some ideas.
It's a good question. I think it's also up to the CEOs to really, there's an old trope where CEOs need to over communicate the mission, right? And I think that that's definitely true, but it's hard. I mean, I don't envy people who have to run companies. It kind of sucks, actually. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely the hard work. But it all trickles down, because otherwise what happens is people just, if you're not intentional about the focus, then people will just figure out what they think the focus is. And then that sort of just goes on its own, right? We all seen this happen at companies. And so, but you know, engineers, everything kind of flows downhill to engineering. Even in engineering-led organizations, I would say that's, you know, it still is the case. So it's an interesting one. I think that, but it's something I'm excited about. Again, it's just the boring stuff, like having the ability and privilege to have these discussions now. I think that just shows a sign of maturity for the industry, the tech industry, you know, whether you're talking data or software, right? And so that's pretty cool to see. And it's cool to have these discussions with people like yourself. I mean, you talk to people, a lot of people, and so do I. And this is sort of what I'm hearing out in the world. So, yep.
There's a little framework I want to share too on this note of keeping things in the right direction that I learned probably a decade ago. And it's actually, I believe it comes from a restaurateur that was the salt shaker theory of leadership. And basically it boils down to constant, gentle pressure. And so imagine that you are the leader of a restaurant and you like your table set a certain way. And the mission of the staff who is on the front side is supposed to keep that table set the right way. Salt shaker goes here, pepper goes there, napkins over here, etc. Now, are you going to get upset and like scream at these people when they get it wrong? No. You're going to constantly apply gentle pressure. Hey, by the way, this is how it's done. This is how we do it. Hey, by the way, this is how it's done. This is how we do it. Every time there's a mishap, it's not freak out. Oh my gosh, you're fired. Oh, what are you doing? You know, it's just constant, gentle pressure on the mission, on the standards, on the requirements of excelling at the business we've decided to build. And they're participants and partners in that mission. And so you have to treat them like participants and partners. And that's where the constant and the gentle comes in. But it is pressure. You can't let off. It has to be constant. But it has to be gentle, I think, in that relates to the side of being respectful and with a version of love or empathy for the people that you've chosen to work with you. Now, in that constant gentle pressure framework, if it's a constant with a particular individual, maybe at that point, the gentle pressure is no longer working and you have to apply a different thing, which is maybe there's no longer a reason for you to be here because you don't understand our mission. I've tried to be constant and gentle to apply the pressures of our business to you, and it's not working, so therefore we part ways. But I think that's a lesson I learned a while back, and it's like every time I've been in a leadership position and I have to redirect the mission, it's been constant, gentle pressure. Not you jerk or you bad person or any sort of like negative thing you can ever think of. Never been like, Jared, when's the last time I yelled at you? Like never, right? Like I've never yelled at you.
Right.
And you've never had to yell at me and vice versa. Like it's because of that. It's that I respect who he is. And if Jared is out of alignment with what I think we're trying to mission towards, I apply constant gentle pressure. Like, here's where I think we're trying to go. Do you agree with that? Where are we off? Where do we need to come back into sync to? Et cetera. And it's never been like, we're way off, man. And this is not working. I mean, that only happens whenever you don't have constant gentle pressure and you allow it to get so out of alignment that you've missed the opportunity for the constant gentle pressure. Now you have to apply brute force, and it's not good for anything.
I mean, it's just like a relationship or a marriage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, but you're
It
absolutely
applies
right.
to a lot of things.
It
Yeah.
applies to a lot of things. There's some businesses I've seen where the boss is just berates the employees all the time, and I know one of them. I won't mention them obviously, but it's basically just kind of a meat grinder of employees who just go in and out, and it's a very hard environment for people to work in, and the people that stick around learn how to play the politics game, and self-preserve. But it's tough. I mean, the Glassdoor ratings on this company and the reviews are just absolutely horrible, and and it's. But you absolutely right. The constant pressure, gentle pressure, that's the key. Because otherwise, like constant pressure without the gentle part is just that's a vice that like literally collapses you, like a black hole or something. So it's but that's just it, But we see this a lot these days too with engineering teams and data teams, especially with kind of the great reset, so to speak, and kind of the jobs landscape. Really, I mean, what was it the other day? I saw like where eBay had posted like record profits or something, and then also said, oh yeah, by the way, we're letting go of like a bunch of people. I don't know what the rationale behind that was, but I think the optics of that, right? When I talk to engineering friends on social media, they're like, yeah, it's like, how do these two connect? And all of a sudden do it at that company is just leave even more of an environment of probably, I'm guessing, just distrust and feeling like you're, under not gentle pressure, but constant pressure.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Interesting times indeed.
What are you seeing though in terms of like, you talk to a lot of guests. I mean, what are some of the big themes that you've been coming across?
With regards to the life of a engineer or well, I think there's a lot of trepidation right now. There's a lot of people who are hoping that the tide has turned or is starting to turn back towards the thriving life of software engineers, because it's been a rough 18 months, and there's still to this day, we just had Justin Garrison on the show talking about Amazon silent sacking, and really this trend of large orgs not even laying off employees, but just either making their lives miserable via mandatory return to office things or removing roles that no longer exist, and no leadership, and how you're going to find a new role, but you're not fired, but like they just want you to quit. Like basically kind of making it so that you quit is definitely a thing that we're hearing about. And a lot of people have either DM'd or, raised their hand or liked when that kind of a post goes out because they had a similar experience that Justin put out there. We talked to him about that. Those are the big trends. I think there's slight hopefulness that, the layoffs are kind of waning and the market is recovering, and there's a hope that the interest rates hikes are over and perhaps we'll have some cuts next year and things will kind of return to the way that they were. I don't think they're ever going to be what they were during the peak of the bubble, maybe someday, but that probably wasn't healthy. And so this is the ramifications of that. So do you want that to be the case? Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing.
Interesting.
Adam, anything different? Anything to add to that?
I'd say it's pretty similar. I mean, I think that we all reflect on, I would say, better economic days when it seemed more hopeful. it's interesting because I think, well, even here in Texas, we're having I live in Texas, Austin, Texas, and whether you want to call it a border problem or not, there's a lot of people coming through the border that are coming through illegally. We have to have the right way to have people come into the country. And there's cities that I live near that are being just overthrown by large amounts of people. And then I think, okay, that's happening, right? I see the headlines. I'm in Texas, and I see a version of that. And I love everybody. I want everybody to be happy and succeed. And there's a right way to do things. And I'm not talking politics necessarily here, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I just really want to run my business, right? I just want to worry about the changelog. I just want to worry about the things that I want to live in this little bubble that is just like my life and not really worry about these things out there. So I think from my personal perspective, I wish I could just do what I want to do, and the world's problems would just somehow be solved, right? The wars, the whatever's happening elsewhere. I mean, obviously these are all terrible things, and I'm not trying to be, personally focused on it, but like I would prefer a more blissful life where I didn't have to worry about all the problems of the world. And it seems like the speed of the world today just seems to just inundate everybody. And there was a time when it was just less than that, or I was just benign to it, or living in bliss. I don't know.
The times of call waiting.
Call waiting. Yeah, we're talking about that at the beginning, right?
I guess that was pre-recording. We're talking about the days of call waiting. So that's an unfortunate callback to before our listener was with us. But yeah, like the days of call waiting when things were just kind of simpler and you didn't know everything about everything all the time. And that can make your life feel frantic and distressing. And, like worrying about stuff that you have no control over because you found out about it. And how can you not worry about it because it's worrying,
Mm-hmm.
And so that does, I think, affect the psyche of all of us.
It's easy to just doom scroll on social media. Like I got off most social media, except for LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm like off most of everything.
Good for you. Yeah. Just read a lot of books, that's kind of fun. And I always joke, I even got rid of most meetings and phone calls too. Like I always joke that the only time I'm actually talking to people is usually on podcasts. Those are my meetings. So
nice.
Because I don't know, you just want to give yourself the mental space to just think. And the thing that I've been thinking about a lot too is just sort of what's coming down the pipe with AI in terms of AI generated content and like how useful is it going to be really? And like, how much do I want to consume of that versus just like actually probably just buying print books and just reading those instead. Mm-hmm. Maybe I just become Amish or something at the same time. I don't know. But, like the thing that set me off the other day was on LinkedIn, they had these AI generated articles, right? So you can get the top voice in whatever topic you happen to collaborate on an article, like this AI generated article. And I was like, as I read through these, I'm like, who's this? Like, who or what are these for? These read very poorly. It's at best very mediocre coverage of a topic that is very like uninformative.
Right.
What is the point of this? And then I think there was a stat that, what was it, by 2025, i.e. next year, like 95% of the internet content is expected to be AI generated. Like, what is it all for at the end of the day? Are you
what are we doing here?
Yeah. What do you read? Are you going to go read that?
That's the hard part for me because I 100% agree with you and I get quite curmudgeonly about it. And I think even just yesterday, Nick Nisi from our JS Hardy podcast posted some AI generated rap song into our channel about me and TypeScript or whatever. And yeah, it was cute. He said, finally a good use of AI. And he's just joking. We're having fun. And my response was like, this is C+ rap. Like this rap is not good rap. It's barely entertaining. It's funny that you applied it to me and TypeScript. Like that's what made it funny was your creativity. It's C+ content. And that's what you're talking about. Very mediocre, right? Like it passed a class, but it's not going to change anybody's life. It's not going to be outstanding or excellent or any of the things that we desire in great art. Then I ask myself, but am I just looking at today's AI generated content? And I'm correct. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're agreeing that it's C+ content, but it's going to be B+ in 25. It's going to be B-. No, that's worse than B+. It's going to be A-. It's going to get to be where like now it's indistinguishable from Magic, and then we're not going to be able to distinguish. And that's what we're just seeing it in its infancy, and it's going to be so much better quickly. And I don't know the answer to that. Is it going to be so much better quickly? Maybe Joe, you know more than we do.
I don't know. I mean, as a content, let me ask you this though, as podcasters, what are your thoughts on how this impacts people like us? There's a rare chance for me to talk to peers like this. I'd love your take on this. Like, what do you think all this does to people like us?
I long for human touch.
Yeah.
And I think if I live in a world where I feel like I can't discern between AI generated, whether it's good or not, and the human touch and the why behind things, then I think I would begin to question the world more so, because like, what is its goal towards me? Am I a transaction to transact, or am I human to, love and endure? Like that's the kind of thing I think about. And I think I'm hoping that as a society, we will all feel that way, and we would generally just push back on like, well, AI generated content is good and all, but I care about humans. And so we sort of have a rise or a revolt against anything generated, that is strictly non-humanistic focused. I'm a humanist. That's it. I'm a human. So that's why I'm a humanist. I'm not even trying to be like negative about that. That's just seems so weird to even say that in 2024, or in my year that I turned 45 in my life. That's just crazy that I have to declare that. So I'm a humanist. I want to be touched and loved by other humans, not non-humans. Now I have a dog, so that's maybe the unique thing. I do care about animals and stuff like that. So that's where I'm a non-humanist, where I transcend when I'm like, I care about my dog. But you get what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm not cool with an artificial intelligence thus far.
That being said, don't you talk to ChatGPT as much as almost anybody in the world?
Okay, fine, Jared. You got me.
Busted.
Does it know that you're a humanist? Have you told it?
Yeah, I think it knows. That's because I do find it helpful. At the same time, I'm not, I suppose, okay, that does make sense, but I think it's because I long for what seems like is better placed in there, seems like human interaction. And because ChatGPT, it doesn't respond to me like it loves me back or anything like that, so I'm not in the movie Her here.
Samantha?
I'm sorry to wake you.
Oh, it's okay.
I just wanted to hear your voice and tell you how much I love you.
God, I love you too.
Okay, well, that's all. Go back to sleep, sweetheart, okay?
Okay.
Okay, good night.
Night.
I am still interacting with it. I'm just being polite because I'm just a polite person. I can't help it. It's my nature. But it's because I long for humanistic touch. I suppose I anthropomorphize the thing and make it feel more human than it actually obviously is not. Because the desire in my humanistic ways is for human touch.
So you want your podcasts created by humans?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even if you can't distinguish? That's where I get lost, because I can't distinguish it. So how do I know?
Well, I think if I can't distinguish it, then I'm thinking like, what is the motivation? Like, what's the end game with the, is it because you want to create more? So I think where the lines get blurred, there is this kind of side conversation we've had behind the scenes, which is, should we have an artificial intelligence help us with our transcripts? Should we have artificial intelligence help us with a literal recreation of our podcast in my voice in a different language? We've been talking about the behind the scenes. We've seen that recent politician in Davos happen. Like, that was super cool. I could somehow literally listen to somebody that spoke in a whole different language for a speech that I would often just discard not because I don't care, but because I can't care because I don't speak the language. I can't understand, right? And so now we have this, just to paint the picture for those who are catching up or listening, is like, there was a thing in Davos. There was somebody who, I'm not sure of all the details. He spoke a foreign language in comparison to English for me. And typically I would just not pay attention. But because somehow, some way, I'm not sure how it happened, that was ran through some sort of artificial intelligence thing. And it was his voice as a politician, just as a normal person, staking his claim and sharing his ideas, but spoken his native language, translated to English in his own native voice. So it was as if I heard this same person speaking English, and now I can understand. And I was like, okay, that's cool. I can understand this person more. That to me, I guess when we talk about generated, what is the purpose of generation, I suppose? Like, if it's to pull the wool over my eyes and entrap me or ensnare me in some way in a scheme, then I'm not for it. But if it's for my betterment and it's for me, then I think I'd probably be more in line with it. But I think over time, even with the betterment side of it, and you can't discern it, it's like, now you question everything because you're just not even sure if anything is for you or against you. Gosh, how doom and gloom is that?
Have you gotten the new Apple Vision goggles yet?
Mm-mm.
Me neither. Curious how that's going to work, though, right? Because because the generative AI with that, I think it's going to be a very interesting use case. I mean, I'm curious what the apps are going to be coming out with that, but it's just, I totally agree. It's like the human touch thing. I mean, I'm about to go, right after we record, I'm going to a conference, with actual people. And I feel like in person is going to be like a thing again.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then tomorrow I'm going to Austin, right, for a conference. And it's like, that's people hanging out. We tried the whole experiment of doing Zoom conferences back in the pandemic, and that was barely passable. Being in a room with, being in a building of 170,000 people, that's actually too overwhelming. But you kind of get the idea. It's like,
yeah, that's a lot. I don't think I would like that.
No, it's like an expo at that point. You just feel like you're in a major city walking around, but you do get to meet people, and I think that's going to be more and more of what people. But I kind of wonder though, is that going to be something that only it's sort of like processed food versus organic food? It's like the human experience going to be something that only people who have means are able to do, or is that and everyone else is stuck with just AI generated drivel, and that's sort of the equivalent of eating Twinkies and
That's right. Yeah.
Well, maybe more hopeful than that. I've likened it to handmade goods.
Oh yeah,
which are still the world of the wealthy, because you can afford to pay more for this kitchen table than the one that's at IKEA. But there's nothing wrong with the one that IKEA makes. That's the manufactured AI version of the content. But there's still going to be a marketplace, I think, for people who are like, you know what, this was made by this guy who lives 10 miles up the road, and it took him 3 months, and I paid a premium for it, but I'm willing to because it was made by a person. And I know the story. And like that is a thing that very much exists today inside of furniture making and stuff. And I wonder if that will be how content online becomes as well.
It's a good question. I was talking to some influencers yesterday, people who get paid to do sponsored posts. And I think the biggest question is, okay, so at what point are we kind of automated out of doing what we do? And so it's an interesting one. I don't know where this all goes. I mean, I'm quite excited about it in some ways. I mean, it reminds me of I think we're all about the same age, I'm guessing, but we were all around when the web information superhighway came into existence.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty fun days. I think there were a lot of good questions about where it was all going to go. And so I feel like we're back here again,
Yeah. Where will it go?
I don't know.
If you're listening, you may remember the early days of the internet where open networks like HTTP and SMTP led to an explosion of websites and online communities. Building a fan site and connecting over shared passions led so many of us to careers in software. Back then, it seemed like anything was possible because the internet of the 90s was built to democratize information, not consolidate it with a handful of big tech companies. Read, Write, Own, Building the Next Era of the Internet is a new book from startup investor Chris Dixon that explores how network architecture plays out in our online lives and the decisions that took us from open networks governed by communities of developers to massive social networks run by internet giants. Read, Write, Own is a playbook for reclaiming control and for reimagining applications so users can own, co-create, and even profit from the platforms they use every day. From AI that compensates creators to protocols that reward open source contributions, this is our chance to build the internet we want, not the one we inherited. Order your copy of Read, Write, Own today or go to readwriteown.com to learn more. I think I've heard of folks generating movies or like alternate versions, like fan art in a way.
Yeah.
Like even that is kind of cool to me because like a human directed the AI to do something and the AI produced it, but in such a fast amount of time in comparison to the human who would never spend their time doing the fan art version of it.
Yeah.
Or a scene, like redoing a scene in a different style with different music via an AI's help. I mean, that's where the line really gets blurred.
There's some cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of creative opportunity directed by a human. I think that's where I'm will probably always draw my line is like, is a human involved in the mission and reason for this? And is there reason, goodwill for me? Right? Goodwill for me, I think, is key. Human involved, goodwill for me. And I think if those two remain true, human involved, goodwill for me, or the pluralized me of team or community, then I think I'm probably going to be okay with what's generated because it's about an X of time saved and ultimately a good output that is for the people I'm trying to serve already.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a good story. So I was hanging out with Colin Kaepernick a couple weeks ago, the old NFL player.
Yeah.
We were having coffee for quite a while, actually. And
are you name dropping here?
No, but I'm going to tell you in a second why this is cool. Yeah, no, I mean, he's a cool dude, but a friend, but we were hanging out and he's working on something really cool. So he had a publishing company. Well, he still has one. Well, I'll rewind. So he was trying to get books published with the big publishers. Right. And because of some of the things in these books, they'd be like, well, this doesn't really fit what we're trying to do. So he started his own publishing company, mainly to give underrepresented voices, a chance to get their stories out, right, in the form of books and other content. And when he saw generative AI, he's like, this is pretty cool. So I can maybe give, some kid, living in a poor neighborhood, the chance to create his own version of a superhero in a cartoon. Right. And so this is the stuff he's working on right now is giving, underrepresented people the voice, the chance to create their own superheroes and all this really cool stuff and tell their stories. And I think that's an awesome use of, generative AI is just giving people the ability to create whatever they want. I mean, my son's in the other room right now, just drawing. He's homesick today. So he just draws. He's actually drawing my friend who's stopping by in about a half hour. I told him to make a really horrible cartoon of him.
Okay.
But I think people want to be creative, and that's why you watch movies, because you vicariously want to be a part of that scene, right? But now you have the ability to create that scene. I think as we're talking about, create kind of mashups of movies that you watch and all this cool stuff. And when I was talking to Colin, I was like, that's actually a really cool idea in the sense where you're giving people the ability to, tell their own stories in the way that they want them told. You don't have to go through these gatekeepers anymore, publishing companies and mass media. It's like you can do whatever you want. And I thought that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My son's face recently, since you mentioned your son and the scenario, he was playing the adventure mode, I suppose, of Minecraft, and he's new to Minecraft. And so he didn't know how to make, I believe it's called a portal or something like that. And he didn't know you had to build it and how many bricks were required and how to use a flint and whatnot to make it this. I think it's just called a portal. I could be wrong. I'm probably
It's
wrong.
a portal. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like, Dad, can you help me with this? He's like, maybe we can ask ChatGPT what to do. And I'm like, that's probably great because Minecraft is so prolific. It probably has a decent answer. So of course, I dropped the question into ChatGPT and it basically gives me a step-by-step instruction. And my wife is like, that's cheating. And I'm like, no, it's kind of not cheating. You're just kind of getting over a hurdle in the process of learning something new. And he's like, was that AI, Dad? Because I showed him and we did it and it worked. And he's like, was that AI? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, his face was so huge because AI assisted him to do something in his life. And for the audience, I made a big O face basically, because his face is burned in my brain because I was like, here he is, he's 8, right? And this is his real first experience with artificial intelligence at 8.
That's so cool.
My gosh, that's crazy to think about. And he was like the OMG face. I don't know how to describe it otherwise, but I was like, this is interesting, what will it do for the future? And that to me is really cool. Having in Colin's case and what he's doing, that's super cool too. You're enabling the disabled basically. You don't have an ability and you're giving or offering a way to get an ability. And that's curiosity, that's creativity, and that's all positive human behaviors. That's just going to create a better world in the future. I'm for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the kind of content I think that's cool, right? You contrast that the fact of having an election coming up and it's going to be deep fakes galore. And that's the
yes,
the dystopian view of it. But it is what it is, and it's happening with or without our opinions, So it's just
right. Yeah, we're kind of just along for the ride. I mean, at the end of the day, it's another tool, and every tool can be used for good and creativity or bad and destruction. You go back to the Industrial Revolution, factories, you look at the printing press, you look at guns, all these things, they're tools and they can be used for good and evil. And very powerful tools like these generative computer programs are going to be used for very good and very bad. And so that's why it's both hopeful and dystopian because people will use them for both. And like you said, Joe, there's nothing we can't stop it. I mean, it's like the horses left the corral. I don't know that one.
Stable? Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. That's
I was thinking of the OK Corral for some reason. Yeah, the horse is out of the stable. Hold on and hope that, we use it for more good than we do for bad.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even my kid though, right? He likes to draw. He doesn't want to use AI. I already showed him everything and he's just like, it's kind of boring. So he just just continues doing his own stuff. And so, I mean, I think to your point, people want to, I think, get back to the kind of the human experience too.
I think so.
I even noticed with engineers too, like, I think it's really easy to go off and use Copilot, and it's a great tool. I think it's going to invert the paradigm of how engineers think about writing code, because you're going to, you got to kind of know what good performant code looks like before you start using these things. I was talking to somebody yesterday about it, and they felt like, half the time they had to go back and re-edit the code. And I think part of it is the prompts that you give it though too. And so if you're using ChatGPT, using Copilot, whatever, but it's kind of like having a very convincing intern who's like, this is absolutely the best code you're going to get. And it's like,
right.
Oh, okay. I don't believe you, but I like your gumption though, man. It's good.
Right. Totally. They're very confidently incorrect. Yeah. I think that as long as humans are in the loop at this point, everything's going to be okay, because we can say, no, that code's wrong, or I ran it, it didn't do what you said it was going to do. But it's the auto GPTs, which are very much just demos today, I think, and the prospect of that, or Adam's prospect of no human touch content, right? Like,
yeah,
the only thing the humans said was, auto generate a movie about this, and like the details of that had nothing to do with creativity. It was just like on autopilot. I don't know when we're going to get to there, but that's where I lose interest, I think. And that's where I think no one's there to say this code actually is completely incorrect, and it's just going to execute in production, right? And shut off the grid and then be like, oh, it messed up.
Oh, no, we were joking the other day on my podcast, this podcast I do called the Monday Morning Data Chat on LinkedIn, but we were joking that actually the world's not going to end through Skynet. It's going to end through a bot that goes around doing a drop table on every corporate system.
Yeah.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah. Old Bobby tables, right?
Yeah. And it just runs rampant. Every mainframe, everything is just gone.
Just gone.
So, and that's really how it goes.
And then we go back to the good old days of voicemail and call waiting, We're just like, well, no more data mining, no more big data. It's all little data.
Actually, one of my friends, who is Bill Inman, he's the guy who created the data warehouse. Okay. He has a landline in his house. He doesn't have a cell phone.
Really?
Yeah. He's like, I don't want people calling me. So if you're at his house and it rings, he'll either pick it up, or he'll just like pick it up and then slam it back down. And that's the do not answer button.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very loud.
Silence. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, he'll travel internationally without a cell phone.
Wow.
Which I think is bananas, but
That's bold.
These days, yeah.
Yeah, I would feel so lost.
It provides so many different utilities besides a phone, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, like boarding passes.
Yeah, maps.
Yeah, all the things.
That's how you take a true adventure nowadays, is you leave the country without your phone.
Oh, scary.
I think I'm out of the country probably every couple of weeks. I mean, I couldn't imagine not having a phone. That would be weird. Like, why? But should try it sometime, I guess. Maybe we'll take a walk on the wild side, and but maybe not. No, it sounds like a bad idea.
That's actually really interesting to think about. More so than AI is our addiction to our devices, really.
Yeah.
Like, I actually think that my heartbeat changed when this topic came up, because I think that I got excited and scared with the thought of what it might be like in the process of empathizing with this person on this journey, on this international journey, sans phone. Like, that to me is like, what? No, and screaming no several times really loud. This is I'm not going to kill you guys' ears, but that's what I'm thinking. Like in my brain, like I'm like Michael Scott over here. No, I mean, like.
Bill went to China too a couple months ago and left his phone. I mean, for a lot of reasons, you probably want to bring a burner phone there, but he went there with no laptop, no phone.
Oh gosh, yes.
I was like, I hope I see you again, man. And he came back, but that was interesting. Do you guys have an Apple Watch?
Used to. Mine broke, and so I didn't get a new one.
Yeah. It's Gen 4, though. It's like super old.
Gen 4? Oh, I had the same one. Yeah, I had to upgrade. My battery kept dying on it.
I can't find a reason to buy another one. I just can't. It still works. Like, what am I getting? really for it? I don't know.
I don't know. Probably nothing actually.
It's bigger. It has a flat
exactly.
face.
Yeah, you get this one. I mean, I got this one because the battery kept dying and I go running a lot and stuff. But have you ever? Okay, so if you have the LTE connection on your watch, a fun thing to do if you want to kind of like blend 2024 with 1990 is just leave your cell phone at home, leave your smartphone at home, and just go out with your watch. Or just actually go out without a watch and go do something too. But it's like, it's just sort of the best of both worlds. You can still take phone calls on your watch, but you don't have your phone with you. So you can't scroll anything.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very bizarre, actually. Like, I sort of live in this century or this year, but I also live back in like 1985 or something.
Yeah.
That's funny that you say that because this is like a simplified version of it, but it's recent. I went to get my haircut this morning, and so I had to sit down for about 5. I had an appointment, right? So I got there on time, but the person was taking a few minutes longer with the previous customer, and I had to sit there. And so what do? Right? I'm in a state of boredom in a public environment where I don't know anybody. I'm not really trying to connect with anybody. So I, of course, go into myself. I'm self-centered, pull up my phone, look at things that probably don't even matter. I didn't scroll social media, but I looked at email. I may have looked at Slack. I think I may have checked in with this thing that I have with Jared. We're trying to plan a trip and stuff like that. I may have checked in with things, and I didn't interact with the environment whatsoever. I can't even remember the waiting room. Was there magazines there? Did I get to touch, taste, and smell the environment around me rather than this phone? And the answer is no, because I had my phone with me. And so as a result of this, I suppose, appendage now, it's going to be there. Everybody in the world has a phone, and you just said taking a trip without one is what? But I just pulled it out.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I've been around the world a lot, and the universal sign of a person now, or universal, it's just somebody hunched over their phone.
Right.
And no matter where you go, anywhere in the world, this is the universal posture of a human.
That is sad. And I do that, and I'm sad about that, really. And we use it as a crutch to avoid, I suppose, humanity.
Oh yeah.
What kind of person am I? I'm like a humanist, not being a humanist. What's wrong with me?
Yeah, man.
Come on, Adam. Get it together.
You're a phonist. Yeah.
You're out there in the world with other humans, and you're talking to a robot on your phone, asking it step-by-step operations for ZFS,
The shame I live in, the shame.
Well, you're doing that too, and you're engaging with your device, and it's just getting more and more signals to get you more and more using your device too. So it's a whole feedback loop. It's like, oh, Adam likes this when he's at this place, so we'll just give him more of that next time he's getting his haircut. I mean, my barber, I got my haircut yesterday. My barber was telling me about somebody who just is constantly just on the phone while he's getting a haircut.
It's like,
my barber charged him double, he said, because he's just yeah, you disrespected my time. So man, sorry. So
you either talk to me or you pay double. Okay.
That's what he did. He's pretty ruthless about that. But I know other celebrities too that they don't let you take a picture with them. They won't let you have your phone around them.
It ruins their Cameo rate. They got to keep that Cameo number up.
Yeah. I remember true story. So who is it? Maynard from that band Tool. He does jujitsu over where my son does jujitsu when he comes to Salt Lake, because we share the same instructor. And it was interesting because people were like, "Hey, can I get a photo with you?" And he's like, "Nah, can't." He's like, "But my name is James if you want to talk."
Yeah, that's always an awkward moment.
Yeah, they're like, "Why?" Well, because you're not going to meet me. You're just going to take a picture with me and then go away.
He's just done with it. He's just had enough pictures in his life.
But then he'll introduce himself and just have a chat, have a conversation with you. But he's like, "I don't want to, I don't want your phone around me."
I'll be happy to answer any question you have, or give you advice, or tell you about my life, or whatever you think is interesting to talk about. But the photos is a no-go.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of celebs in Salt Lake, or what's going on over there? You got all these big.
I don't know, man. I just have random friends. If I got a set list from Maynard that's hanging on my wall there from the show we did here. But it's
That's cool.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just have this weird thing where I just randomly meet people. So it's in the most random locations. I cannot explain it.
And don't take their picture. Picture didn't happen, Joe. So
Picture
I don't know
didn't
if I can believe it.
Well, he had his bodyguard there too. So if you tried to do that, I'm pretty sure his bodyguard would do something to your phone. So
yeah, but jujitsu, so he's got to toil with you. Yeah,
true. Yes, that'd be a bad form.
Well, jujitsu is not karate, right?
Jiu-jitsu is all grappling, right? So it's all the
yeah, it's all grappling. It's all about. It's really to not be the aggressor. It's to be the defense to somebody's offense, right? It's the don't touch me, get away from me. and try to avoid a fight, really just trying to trap them to make them struggle and give up and go away.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really hard to go on the offense with jits because you'd have to actively chase somebody and then try and get them into an armbar. That'd be really weird.
Yeah, you'd have to not be jujitsu. You'd have to be a different art.
Well, I assume that Joe would be doing defense if Maynard's bodyguard's coming after him. I mean, wouldn't he be?
He's a tough dude, man. I wouldn't want to mess with his bodyguard. I know his bodyguard. He's not one you want to mess with.
The bodyguard should be that type of person that you don't want to mess with. Otherwise, they're probably not very good.
Yeah, don't mess with them.
It's the same bodyguard who's the bodyguard for Roger Waters and other musicians. So he's been around the block a bit. But yeah, jiu-jitsu is one of those things where this is developed because Brazilian jiu-jitsu was developed for the unruly streets of Rio de Janeiro and places like that, where and the guy who came up with it, or at least made it popular in Brazil, is Helio Gracie. He was really of the opinion that a smaller opponent should be able to out leverage and outmaneuver a bigger opponent, and that's sort of the essence of jiu-jitsu, is really using leverage to beat a bigger opponent in a street fight. So that's kind of where it came from. But it's pretty cool. I think everyone should learn it. It's really nice to know. So
what I find interesting about the jiu-jitsu story is that it's not Brazilian.
No, it's Japanese.
That's right. It originates in Japan, but became famous as Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
By Gracie, as you just said. That's so interesting because when you research jiu-jitsu, you're like, well, you find the origin is Japan, but then its claim to fame is Gracie and in Brazil when it has, and then obviously MMA is a version of that, but not really. It's
MMA started in Brazil with Vale Tudo back in the day. So they used to have these bare knuckle fights where it's literally no holds barred. You could do whatever you want. So
that's some crazy people, man. I would never do that.
It's nuts. I don't not at my age. No, maybe younger, but
at any age, gosh, forget that.
That's
Let's zoom out for 1 second because there's one thing that I took a note of from something recently you wrote, and you mentioned this, so I'm going to go back to it. It was your, what to expect from data engineering in 2024. Some predictions essentially, and you mentioned Copilot being a gateway to AI, and a lot of the incoming stuff. I kind of want to. Not so much end, but I think we're coming close to a version of it in. So I want to get your take on this aspect of AI-enabled workflows and the long-standing idea of engineers actually engineering. How's that going to play out? Will we always prefer writing code? Will AI overflow this thing and turn us into just generative people? I don't know. What's the play out there?
It's an interesting one because there's two tensions involved in the discussion that I had on Copilot as a gateway drug to AI for companies, right? Because on one hand, it means companies can legitimately say, "Oh, we're using AI to improve our workflows," right? I think that is, you can legitimately say that it does improve your workflows, right? That's cool. On the other hand, engineers want to engineer, right? So I suppose it's maybe in proper engineering, what we do, I sort of engineering, but real engineers, I'm just joking. Mechanical engineers or civil engineers, back when you have drafting tables, right? Mm-hmm. You're drafting stuff by hand and then AutoCAD comes out, right? Now I can just do all the designs, and have them all generated. I think that's sort of a similar-ish thing but you're still designing, but it just makes it a ton easier. But the tendency I know is a lot of engineers, it's just there's a certain manly or bravado feel to writing code on your mechanical keyboard that's super loud. Your wife can hear you in the next room if you have one of those. But it's it's loud, it's cathartic. And that's the experience I think that engineers want to have is I'm writing the code. It's like the scene of Hackers or the Matrix where stuff's going on your terminal and it's just, you feel like you're doing something.
Right.
Yeah. Whereas so I think that's the tension that you're in because you could do a lot of stuff with copilots and whatnot, but what's the tension between me feeling like I'm doing real work? I kind of make an equivalent thing to electric motorcycles now, and the fact that Harley had put on the sound of a motorcycle to make it sound like it was still a Harley motorcycle. So that's sort of the tension because engineers I know it's that's not real software engineering, you're not a real programmer if you're not clanking on a keyboard.
Right.
What's the point? So that's the tension, but I think that it remains to be seen, I think the inevitability is though these tools will integrate themselves so far into the fabric of every corporation that it's sort of the inevitability that they're going to be there,
Yeah. I kind of see that as just being a generational thing perhaps, and just being one generation away from that being gone. I mean, I liken it to manual cars and automatic cars.
Yeah.
It's like you'll always have your enthusiast who's going to drive their manual, but pretty much, I mean, I can name on one hand my friends who drive a manual, and pretty much everybody else just drives an automatic. And it'll probably be like that with people that want to have the clicky keyboard and the hardcore engineering with their Vim and all the things. Like people like me, we're all going to die. And then the next round, like they didn't even know that life. They grew up like Adam's son at the age of 8, getting instructions from ChatGPT, and their very first programming course was all code generated by GitHub Copilot, you know? And so that for them was normal. So that might be a thing that passes with time.
I think you're right. It's just a generational thing. And we're holding on to, pull this mechanical keyboard from my cold dead hands kind of thing. So old Charlton Heston.
Yeah, exactly. Because it resonates with me. I mean, not the mechanical keyboard, but all the other stuff does totally.
Yeah. It's you can pull my Vim editor from my cold dead hands.
I use Arch, by the way. Like all of these memes of the neckbeard generation, that's probably just going to go by the wayside,
And for the audience out here, none of us have neck beards. None of us have beards, actually. No. So
we're enlightened.
That's right. We've shaved.
we all just want to look younger is what it is, actually. So.
Yeah, that's true. I would be grayer if I had more facial hair. So that could be the case. I'm still back on build versus buy. No.
Yeah, we didn't even go there. Gosh.
Well, Adam took us a whole different direction, which is why there's 2 of us.
Well, I think we kind of answered in a way, didn't we, though?
It was good, man.
Yeah. We went a lot of different directions, but it was a great conversation with you guys.
It was a good ride.
Yeah. I dug it, Joe.
Yeah, I'd love to have you on my show sometime, or if the audience likes the podcast, happy to be back anytime. So
we can riff.
Yep.
We can.
Sounds good.
Well, it's what happens when you get 3 podcasters together, is it ends up just being a podcast.
It just ends up being a
podcast. That's right.
Strangely enough.
That's a good point to end on, I think, right there.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Joe. Awesome having you here.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, pleasure.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And as we close out real quick, thank you to our listener, Darren Smith, for pointing us Joe's direction. Darren recently joined Changelog++, and I was emailing with him, thanking him for his support, and asked him, hey, what would you like to see coming up on the shows? And he said, Joe Reis. And I said, I'm on it. And that was not too long ago. So happy to fulfill this one. Sometimes it takes us years to do listener requests. This was like weeks. So hope you enjoyed it, Darren. Appreciate you supporting us and listening.
Sick. Thanks, Darren.
Changelog++. It's better.
There you go.
Yeah, but no, seriously, I've been a listener of your podcast for a while. So when I heard you guys were interested in having me on the show, I was like, yep, absolutely, do this.
Very cool.
So yeah, big fan.
Yeah, you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Be back. Whew. What a fun conversation with Joe. So I guess the question is, did we adequately cover build versus buy? I know that subject in every facet of developer life is interesting, and I suppose we covered it tangentially, if not indirectly. But I guess the question, like I said again, is should we have Joe back on for a particular deep dive on build versus buy? So if you have compelling feelings about that, you can let us know pretty much anywhere. X, Twitter, LinkedIn, Slack. That's free, by the way. Head to our free Slack community, changelog.com/community. It's free to join, and everyone is welcome. On Monday, we have a new album dropping, and you're going to love it. I dare you not to dance. I dare you. I won't spill the beans here, but just wait for Monday. Make sure you listen to Changelog News on Monday, or pay attention to the Slack community. Okay, so I want to give a massive thank you to our friends, partners, and the home of changelog.com, fly.io. Without their support, we would not be as good as we are because we would not be paid. They cover a lot of things for us. They love us. And if you want to love them, well, fly.io and tell me sent you. Also, our friends over at TypeSense, love them as well. Typesense.org. Use it in the open source or upgrade to cloud if you need those amazing cloud features. Jason and team are amazing. We love them. Typesense.org. And of course, our good friends at Sentry, Sentry.io. And use our code Changelog to get $100 off the team plan. Sentry.io. Okay, those BMC beats keep on hitting hard. I love them. I hope you love them because we're going to keep playing them. And that's kind of fun. That's it for this show. Thank you again for tuning in. Check out Changelog and Friends. Coming soon to you. We were traveling this week, so we're a little delayed on some of our shipping, so don't mind the schedule shifting, but it is coming and you're going to love it. So check that out. Changelog.com/friends. That's it. Bye for now.